Alright, hello. How's everybody doing today? We're doing it on a Tuesday night this time. I got a little bit busy on Monday. I just kind of slipped my mind, forgot about this. But we are now here and ready to go. It's a Tuesday evening. We've got session 5 of the book of Matthew. We've finally passed the wise men. We're going to be getting into the flight to Egypt this week. We'll probably get started in just a second. It probably will be a little bit shorter of a episode, I guess you could say, than the last week or two have been. We're not going to cover quite as many verses, and I don't have too much to say beforehand, so we should get right into it. So, a few of the things we had been looking at last week, right? We saw the main questions we were left with that I hadn't really had a good answer to. A lot of it was surrounding the wise men and their origin, right? Exactly where they came from, why they were following the star, how they knew its significance, whether they knew the significance of the items they were giving as gifts. Right. That's something I still don't have an answer to. I will probably do, as I said, I think it's one of those things that I would do some research on, and maybe sometime come back and do a special. Oh, is the music too loud? See, last time I did a video, it was much too quiet, Ben. That's the reason I turned it up a little bit. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, I would probably do like a special. I don't know if I could do a special live stream for that, I guess, or a special, I don't know, just do a special video essay based on just that. Some of the other things that we were looking at was that Jesus was probably already a little bit older by the time the wise men got to him. That was one of the things we noted. We were wondering about exactly how this star worked, whether it was a real star, exactly, whether it was some kind of other celestial anomaly, whether it was, planets or who knows what else. And we were really looking into the way it says that it guided them and then stopped above the house. And I said it a lot last stream. I'll repeat it once more. I'm not an expert on these sort of things, and especially I'm not an expert on astronomy. I do love astronomy, though. And so I can't say with certainty whether or not something like that is possible. Like a star seeming to stop above a specific location or a planet or something else of that nature. All I can say is that it's definitely not typical, because stars move. Well, actually, they're not moving. The Earth spins at a constant rate, and because of that, all the stars in the sky appear to be moving in a spiral, except for like two. One, well, really just one. There's a few others that don't look like they move very much, but they still kind of move. The only one that doesn't really move at all is Polaris, the North Star, because it is exactly above our pole, and hence it's sort of at the axis, and so it doesn't look like it's moving. Which, interesting little topic. The Polaris, actually, which star is our North Star changes over time, because the Earth's axis changes over time. And so during Noah's time, it would have been a completely different star that would have been in the same spot that Polaris is now. Just a little interesting tidbit there. But let's go ahead and jump into this. I feel like there might be something where I might do Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do videos, or I'll just mention them in streams, like where I go back at questions we had after I had time to research them, maybe, and see if we can come up with anything. I haven't had time this week, but maybe next week or in a few weeks, I'll come back to those thoughts. But the passage we are at now is going to be, we're going to start with just verses 13 through 15 of, this is still Matthew 2. And it reads, "After they were gone, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, 'Get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him.' So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod's death, so that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled. Out of Egypt I called my son." Okay, so just a few things right off the bat. I did a whole refresher and I kind of forgot to do the little quick refresher I meant to do. So yeah, we just left off with the wise men being told to go back and avoid Herod, to go back a different route to their homeland. So after they were gone, after the wise men left, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared to Joseph in a dream. Now we were talking about this angel of the Lord appearing to Joseph in his dreams. Both of the times we get told that an angel appears to him. And we were noting how it's interesting that the same verbiage is not used of the wise men's dream. Which is interesting, because if it's such a pattern that it gets explicitly stated in both of Joseph's cases, and usually we get kind of these kind of details, like whenever an angel is involved, we usually get told that they're involved, right? And so it's interesting that in the wise men's case we don't get told that, and so whether exactly what their dream was like, we can't say, but I have a feeling that it wasn't like Joseph's, where an angel appeared to him and said like, don't go back by your homeward route, just because it doesn't say that. You know, I mean, is this kind of a logical fallacy? I can't remember which fallacy that is, that like omission doesn't mean that the opposite is true or whatever. Like, just because it tells us it wasn't an angel of the Lord doesn't mean it isn't. But, you know, patterns are patterns. What does this tell us about Joseph's dream? I guess actually the question would be, why the difference? See, now we're making a lot of conclusions based on something that we don't technically know. But just follow the tangent for a minute. That's part of what this channel is about, is, you know, jumping too deep down rabbit holes, following conclusions that we really can't make for certain. But if their vision wasn't an angel, why wasn't it an angel? If both of Joseph's visions were, and they seem to be kind of similar in effect, and my guess would probably be because they would have been unfamiliar with an angel, and that it would have, like, they would not have maybe understood what it was, or that it was connected to this child, right? They might have, like, not believed it or something, or just been terrified of it, or thought it was something else, which kind of indirectly gives us a small hint maybe that they weren't incredibly knowledgeable about the Jewish religion, really, if that makes any sense. That's a lot of conclusions that, like, really we don't have any proof for any of those things I just said, but that would be my guess. My guess is that most likely their dream did not have an angel, because it didn't say it did. And my guess would then be that, why did it not have an angel? Who can say for certain? But that would be my guess, is that an angel would have done more harm than good. It would have scared them more than it did. More than it did, like, all of them, as it would with Joseph. Now, what did the angel tell him? Get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. It is a little interesting that Mary gets the label his mother rather than being your wife. It is kind of a prevalent theme all the way through. We tracked it in the genealogy as well, that Joseph isn't connected to Jesus directly as his father in the genealogy. This seems like a similar sort of thing, right? Like Jesus and his mother, because Jesus isn't technically Joseph's son. I think is sort of why it's set that way. I mean, that also might just be like a Jewish thing. Like, it's not weird to say his mother about your wife, you know. That just might be the way their culture is. But yeah. I also think there's an additional layer of, it puts the prevalence on Jesus, right? Jesus is first in the line of child and his mother, right? And Jesus is even how she is quantified, if that makes sense. So, like, this isn't about Mary or Joseph, it's about Jesus. That seems to be, like, a secondary reason, is giving... I don't know. I don't think it's like they're actively trying to do this necessarily, but you know what I mean. When there's a more important person in a room, you give them more prevalence, you know. Jesus is more important. Take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. Okay, flee to Egypt. This part of the story was always one that really fascinated me, because it feels like a sudden blast from the past. Like, whenever I hear Egypt's name in reference to the Bible, like, I'm instantly just flooded with Moses. Like, because it's just such a prevalent story, and they do talk about it a lot. Like, Egypt gets brought up a lot in the Exodus and the Old Testament, and I feel like it does get drawn as a parallel to, like, going back to Egypt is, you know, going back to before God, you know, going back to paganism and sin kind of thing. I don't think that's how they're using it here, but, like, it's interesting. Egypt kind of has a really bad rap. Kind of has a really bad rap in the Bible scheme, right? Egypt, oh yeah, the place that, like, benefited from the Jews and then decided to enslave them and benefited more and then wouldn't let them go and then tried to kill them all. Yeah, that place. Yep. So I think this section always really interested me. And when we get to the end there, I think we'll talk about this a lot, the really cool parallels with Egypt that we see, right? Why Egypt? But let's wait till the end. I think that last passage, the prophecy, seems most important here, regarding that kind of thing. And stay there until I tell you to. Which is interesting, that the angel seems to really have, like, God is not being hands off in this Jesus birth ordeal. Like, he's personal. It feels like it's the personal charge the Lord is giving to Joseph. That's a good point. Yeah, it's get up, take the child and his mother, right? Like, yeah, you need to take care of them. That's a very good point. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Why is it Joseph that he goes to, right? Because as Joseph is the protector, right? He's the man of the house, or whatever you want to say. He's, you know, that's his charge now, is to take care of Mary and Jesus and to protect them. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that that's who God and the angel went to. Is, get up, Joseph, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt. What I was going to say is, it's interesting, the angel's, like, very hands-on. Like, it's very much so, like, he's giving them instructions all along the way. Like, okay, we send Mary an angel, and then we send Joseph an angel to help him out, and then, oh, we send Joseph another angel. Okay, you need to leave Egypt. And then, when you're in Egypt, I'll be keeping tabs on you, and I'll let you know when it's time to come back. I don't... Whether that continued, like, whether they kind of constantly were getting help from God throughout, like, direct help, direct messages from him throughout Jesus' life, who knows, but it's interesting to note, like, and it just shows you how important this was. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. Okay. I don't know. There's not really anything super interesting about that sentence, to be honest. I think it kind of is self-explanatory, right? We already talked about why Herod, what his motives were probably, and why he was doing what he was doing. Okay, I did just have a very interesting parallel, and I'll get. Okay, now I'll bring this parallel up now, but I don't want to like go deep into it till the end, because as I said, I think there's a lot of parallels we can draw out from that last sentence. But Herod, it's interesting that God seems to be using him in a similar way of like by Herod's anger and jealousy and by his anger and jealousy and greed, he is going to search out the children and kill all the newborn kids. And by doing so, he is going to inadvertently set up this prophesied child to be to escape and be saved in an unforeseen manner, right? And this child, and because of that, this child is his destiny is fulfilled, right? I kind of jumbled that, but you may have guessed the parallel, right? It's Moses and Herod, and feels like the Pharaoh on this skit, if that makes sense. He's kind of playing that role, and it really is a similar one in the parallels we just talked about. And you do wonder if that's part of the reason Herod does this, is if it's a similar, God knew his heart, and so he let him he hardened it so that he wouldn't. I'm kind of like not being able to complete my sentences in an eloquent way. It's hard to explain. He saw that Herod meant to do evil, and so God kind of let him so that he could fulfill his plan through that. Oh my, what just happened? Okay, there we go. Let me go for 1 second. I gotta grab a glass of water. My throat's kind of sore. I've been a little under the weather, so that's another reason why I'm kind of glad I'm doing this tonight instead of last night, because I would have been even worse. If you can't tell, my voice is still a little nasally and deep, so let me just grab a drink real quick. Okay. So that's one of the main parallels I see with this whole section is with Moses. Another one I see is with Abraham. And I want to talk about both of those at the end. See, look at me. I'm pulling off a. I'm giving you a hook. You know, you gotta stay for the end. You know, because then we're gonna get to the real juicy stuff. You know. But no, it's because that last sentence I think is the most important one. But verse 14 now. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. So what do we notice about this passage? There is one specific detail about this sentence that really sticks out at me. Okay, it seems like a really obscure and useless detail, but I feel like it kind of tells us a lot actually about the situation. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night. During the night. This is not like... This was a genuine, legitimate, like, escape. This wasn't, an escape to Egypt. Herod was, like, out for them. Herod had, like, people posted around. Herod had spies, probably. Like, or at least they thought he did for sure. Like, they were worried that he would catch them as they left the town, that he would, be in on the Roman guards and their census people maybe, who knows. Like, they thought they had to escape during the night. And that word, and escaped to Egypt, right? So I think that's an interesting detail. Just gives us some more context about, exactly how to visualize this, how this was going down, right? Herod was, posting people around, trying to figure out who is the baby. Which baby is it? Okay, somebody in Nazareth. Okay, a bunch of people are in Nazareth right now. We just had a census. Okay, maybe they already left Nazareth. Oh, a bunch of people were at the inns. Who could it be? So he's searching around. He's trying to find them. And they escape during the night. Another detail that I did not notice until just now. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night. Like, this is like quick. Like, he basically did it happen the same night? Like, is this he was sleeping and he was, yeah, I think it is, because look at how direct the angels messages. So see, I just said all that about how I think they were like trying to be sneaky because they left during the night. That might have been the wrong conclusion, because there's other clues here. The angel, get up! ! Take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there. Alright? So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. As in, like, he literally woke up from his dream and was like, honey, we gotta go. And they just, like, ran out of the house. Like, this happened. I'm starting to get the picture that this was not, like... This is almost the opposite of what I thought it was. I'm starting to get the picture that this was not some, like, calculated, like, sneaking mission, like Paul being dropped out of the basket out of the city, It wasn't like that. This seems, it seems almost the opposite. Joseph was, like, woke up and was like, we gotta go. And they just, like, packed everything up and left that same night. Right? And honestly, kudos to them. Kudos to Joseph for taking those instructions, and he did not hesitate. He did it immediately. And you gotta think, we say, oh, that's like, you read this and it sounds so much like a story that it's easy to forget it's easy to forget the real impacts of certain things. Like, moving to Egypt just on a whim with a newborn child, like, you don't just do that. Okay? That is a bold move. That's a big change for him, right? And so, you know, it took some faith to do that, to just leave that night, it seems. I wonder now, okay, let's check my Bible. Let's see, is there an article before the night that could give us a little more clue? Ooh, so this is interesting. The interlinear has it, and the mother of him by night. That's even a little less strong. During the night, the, not a, the seems to specify, like, okay, this specific night, like, it was the night, not a night. Night is a weird word because it can kind of be used both ways. It can mean, like, not day, and it can also mean this particular 12 hours on this date, if you see what I mean. But during the night kind of feels a little stronger than by night. By night is not a definite article at all, so there's a small chance that what it's saying is he got up, right, like out of his dream, and then, you know, maybe the next night they left. But I still think it's most likely the same night. That's just kind of what it sounds like. The whole "so he got up" thing, and the emphasis the angel says at the beginning, like, get up, like he's telling him to do it now. But yeah, as I was saying, it's a pretty big move that Joseph accepts the angel's words right away, and has to the faith to go. And who do you know? Who are we starting to be able to make comparisons to again? That's right, now we've got Abraham. The second Egypt comparison I think we might be able to draw out of this section at the end. Some of you are probably going to be saying by the end of this that, like, I concocted this whole plan, like how to connect everything to Abraham and Moses, because every single point I make connects to one of those two. But that's not true. The passage just kind of does that itself. That's sort of the same gist, like, hey, go this way, and I'll tell you where to go next. And Joseph says, okay. Sounds just like Abraham. I will say, in Joseph's, well, no, not defense, I don't know. In the angel's defense, I guess, Joseph had just seen, like, the weirdest birth of all time, and the whole manger scene with the shepherds and the wise men showing up. Like, he probably at this point was like, okay, God, I kind of believe you now. Like, something's obviously going on, so wherever you tell me to go, I'm going, because I just saw some weird stuff. You know. It's kind of cool. That does come up a lot, where, you know, God will show those signs, if sometimes just so that we can have more faith in him. So now verse 15, he stayed there until Herod's death, so that was what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled. Out of Egypt I called my son. Okay. He stayed there until Herod's death. Now, some of you smarter Bible people are probably saying, wait. Herod's death, except, isn't Herod also the person who cut off John the Baptist's head? How could he already be dead if that hasn't happened yet? Right? Oh, and isn't Herod also one of the people who was there when Jesus got crucified? Yes. Of course. That was a different Herod. I don't know why, but historical people can never seem to, like, not choose the same name for their kings. I don't know what it is, but anyways, they're both named Herod. And this Herod, the new Herod, who is the one who kills John the Baptist, I think it's Herod Antipas. Maybe. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, the right stresses, but yeah, I think it's that. This is Herod's son. That doesn't sound right, but it might all. Yeah, I think it's his son. It might be his nephew, Herod Jr. Herod Jr. sounds so cursed. It just sounds like a villain. Like Herod Jr. is like, sounds like Bowser Jr. Like you just know like exactly what kind of person that is. Anyways, I know I'm stereotyping Herod. If there are any people named Herod out there, I'm sorry. But it sounds like a villain's name. It really does. But yes. Herod Antipas is, I believe, this Herod's son. It might be this Herod's grandson, actually. I think it might be this Herod's grandson. We'll see. I'm pretty sure they talk about it. Even if not in this gospel, in one of them, it goes into detail on Herod's family line. So yes. No, this is not an anachronism. Herod died, and then another Herod was born from the ashes. He stayed there until Herod's death, which obviously makes sense because, see, it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense. What do I mean by that? On the surface, that seems to make obvious sense. Like, oh yeah, of course, he waited till Herod died, because Herod was the one who wanted to kill Jesus. Okay, but wouldn't Herod's heir also want to? Like, wouldn't Herod tell him about this? Oh yeah, and there was this kid who almost took my throne. You're gonna have to keep an eye on him. Like, I don't know. It's a little odd that the next Herod doesn't seem to know about this. And that kind of reveals another truth. Well, it was a long time. It was probably like at least 4 or 5 years, right, until Herod died. That's my guess, at least. It's at least a few years. And so then you're probably asking yourself, okay, couldn't they have come back and like Herod might have forgot about it by then? Or like, how would he even know that this is the same kid? Like, surely his spies aren't that good, or they would have found him in Egypt. So I think, though, that kind of Herod probably assumed that he had killed him. Yeah, he probably did. And so that's why it's a little odd, right? Why stay until Herod's death? Probably just not to draw attention to himself, maybe, right? If he comes back into Israel, then he'd probably have to put some paperwork in or something. Oh, and then there's a census, and then it's like, oh, Joseph, oh, I see, you're from Nazareth. Oh, isn't that interesting, you know? And then Herod might eventually get tipped off, perhaps, that somebody from Egypt with a child who was just the right age once was living in Nazareth. It still seems like he probably would have been safe at any time. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, like, the Bible directly points out until Herod's death, like, that was the reason, like, okay, Herod's dead, now we can go back. So, I don't know, I guess it kind of shows maybe how strong Herod's fear and, I don't know, anger, I guess is the right word, was about this child, that, like, up until his dying days, he was still, you know, paranoid about it, I guess. That would be my assumption, based on that. I also think there is definitely something to, you know, it was God's plan for them to stay in Egypt for a period of time. The angel said, I'll tell you when to come back. You know, it's not like Joseph was, you know, tactically waiting for the right moment to come back. God had his hand behind all of this. But it's interesting, as I said, that the Bible explicitly links their coming back to Herod's death. So that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled. Out of Egypt I called my son. Okay, I need to look in the Greek here because that clause, that doesn't really seem to make sense. He stayed there until Herod's death, so that what was spoken. Why did he have to wait till Herod died for that prophecy to be fulfilled? That prophecy doesn't seem to be linked to Herod's death. I guess it's probably just linked to the fact that they needed to stay in Egypt for a while so that, like, God would be calling him out of Egypt, right? Like, a quick vacation in Egypt doesn't really count. I'm guessing is what it's saying, but that just seems like an odd clause. Like, that's why he had to wait till Herod died, so that the prophecy would be fulfilled. The prophecy that doesn't mention Herod at all. Let me look at the Greek. Okay. Yeah, I don't... In the Greek, it's even stronger. Like, it's pretty clear that he stayed there until Egypt so that the prophecy would be fulfilled. Like, that's basically what it says. Let me... I had it open. Yeah, okay, here it is. Where is this prophecy from? So... the prophecy is from Hosea 11:1. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Yes. So, yeah, once again, I don't see any... that... I'm thinking it's essentially just saying he needed to wait. He needed to be in Egypt for a time so that God could call him back, essentially. Like, Herod died and God was able to call Jesus and his family back to Israel. And that leads us to the moment we've all been waiting for. The prophecy spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. Okay, a few quick things. Through the prophet is an interesting phrase because usually through the prophet I feel like is reserved for Isaiah. In this case, it was not. It was Hosea. Not the same person. Don't confuse the two. There's Isaiah and there's Hosea. So just that's just a little something interesting, I guess. I noticed. Maybe that's just an incorrect conclusion of me that the prophet usually seems to be talking about Isaiah, but maybe that's just because Isaiah is the prophet that most often gets brought up because Isaiah was the bomb. I mean, he talked about so much, man. Reading the prophecy again, though, you probably were able to see why I thought there were a lot of parallels to other passages with this prophecy, and it's explicit in this. Hosea 11:1, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. There are actually like a wild amount of layers to this that verse. The first half isn't particularly relevant to Jesus, but I think it's interesting. When Israel was a child is kind of cool because Israel was also the name of a person. So that's just a little fun thing, is that like when God personifies Israel a lot, and it's interesting because Israel was the name given to Jacob in his later life. I don't think in this instance it's supposed to have that double meaning, but I wonder if it sometimes is. It's one of those things that like I could see God use it cleverly. I don't know if he ever did, but what is that passage talking about though from Hosea? When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. That passage seems to be pretty clearly talking about on its own when the Exodus, right? When Israel was a child, right, still in their foundling years in Egypt, and right after, and they were still learning how to be God's chosen people. He loved them, and out of Egypt I called my son being Israel in the first meaning. And so that's why Jesus being also being called out of Israel is really cool. A lot of God's prophecies are that get fulfilled by Jesus in the New Testament are those sort of things, right? They're meanings that they have a clear meaning about Israel's or somebody else's history, but then they also apply directly to Jesus. And it's something that's really cool. And that story, right, reminds us a lot of Moses. I think if Israel is the first interpretation, right, out of Egypt I called my son, if the first interpretation is the Israelites, the second is Jesus, based on this passage, I think a third interesting one is Moses, right? I think Moses is a similar story of, as we said, Herod plays that Pharaoh role in a similar way, Pharaoh killing all the children, Moses magically escaping, and then having to be sent off to, having to leave, and then out of Egypt, I called my son, both Jesus and Moses, coming out of Egypt. It's an interesting parallel because it's almost the opposite. In Moses' case, he has to go back to Egypt to begin his mission, and in Jesus' case, it's the opposite. He has to come back out of it. And then the fourth and final time somebody comes out of Egypt would be Abraham, right? If you remember Abraham, while he's wandering around Canaan, right, he stops at Egypt for a time, and then I actually feel like, if I remember correctly, it's when he comes back out of Egypt that God gives him most of his visions and promises, and that's when his story really begins and his name changes and stuff. So it's very symbolic that Jesus is following in the footsteps of all of the greats of the Bible, essentially, right? Abraham, Moses, and Israel as a nation, and Jesus is following that same path. Is really cool. So then, I think we're gonna call it there for today. I was planning on maybe going farther, but I wasn't sure if we would have time or not. And we're already at 45 minutes almost. We kind of took it a little bit slow to start, and there were a few hiccups here and there. I had to get so yeah, I hope you all enjoyed talking about this one. If you guys have any questions real quick or thoughts about this passage before we finish as a whole, thank you everybody who was here. It's a pleasure to do this. I'm gonna try really hard to make sure I do it Monday 8:15 every week, but I know I've been a little inconsistent so far. Hopefully I can get on top of that. I might also end up changing. No, I think I'm gonna leave it. There's a chance I end up changing the day to Friday, 8:15, but probably stay Monday 8:15. So be on the lookout for next week's stream. I usually post a beforehand, schedule it beforehand so that you can kind of see it on the stream YouTube channel when it will be happening. And then I think you can also have YouTube set it up so it notifies you when I go live, so that's kind of useful. this was a pretty interesting passage. Next time we get the conclusion of Herod's story, right, when he does the deed we've talked about a few times, right, when he kills all the... I almost said kills the younglings, but that makes him sound like Anakin Skywalker, so... So until then, I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and a very happy new year. And we